suckers. Excuse me, taxi.
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Sunday morning. Well, there's big controversy on climate change. And finally, the United Nations has said, well, maybe it's not really happening. Well, with us today is an expert, Brianna Lyman, and she is with the Federalist. And, Brianna, I mean, the joke I tell on the air is the same people that believed the planet Earth was flat believed that climate is changing. What is the reality? And you tell us.
And John, those same people also believe that men can become women. So that's the kind of caliber of people that we're dealing with here. Look, the UN came out and they said, look, after 50 years of getting it wrong every single time, we finally decided that climate change isn't actually that big of a deal, right? It's not happening the way it would. And, a lot of people are trying to just kind of sweep that revelation under the rug, especially Democrats, because they sold the climate change lie for decades to their voters. And yet they're stopping it now. And it's not because they suddenly found new evidence. Okay, the evidence they use now is the evidence that all the, climate deniers and Nazi collaborators had for 30, 40 years saying, hey, look, Florida's actually not going to go underwater. What happened now is that it is so politically toxic to run on climate change, because what comes along with climate change is affordability issues, right? Democrats' policies drive up costs for families, for small businesses. It causes disinvestment. And so Democrats are trying to, buffer their electoral prospects this November by backing off a really toxic platform.
Well, you're absolutely right. And, when I spoke at a forum the other day, and what I said is, because everybody says CO2 is going up. But I gave them the interpretation of why CO2 is going up. The reason CO2 is going up, when we go from 7 billion people to 8 billion people, the planet Earth adjusts for it, because CO2 feeds the plants, and the planet Earth has to grow more plants to feed those extra billion people.
Right, and those same people are the ones who said that we would have an overpopulation crisis and we had to stop having children for that exact reason you just mentioned. And yet now, 15 years after that initial, stop having kids, we're overpopulating the Earth and causing climate change happen, we're now facing a birth rate crisis, not just in the United States, but across the West. So these people have consistently gotten it wrong for years, and none of them are going to be held accountable, right? Al Gore, John Kerry, the rest of the climate activists, none of them are going to have to pay back any of the money that they got either in grants or got paid for by climate activists to go and speak about climate change. It was all this ruse just to, line the coffers of Democratic allies. And for what? Like, what did we get out of it? The only two things that we really got out of it were, again, higher gas prices. And we gave places like China and even India an edge, right? They never stopped producing the emissions they produce. China is responsible for a third of global emissions. Nothing we do here, we could cut all emissions tomorrow and it would still be negligible until China and India and a few of our other allies, or not allies, world partners, also took those same measures. But they didn't. And Democrats never went after China or India, and so they shipped our jobs there, right? They actually gave them more incentive to produce emissions. So it was all a big farce, and people are going to try to sweep it under the rug the same way they did the COVID scandal. And I really wish people would not let that happen.
Now, I don't know if you're involved in windmills at all, but windmills along the Atlantic coast, the Long Island coast and the whole Atlantic Ocean, are against the environment. They're destroying the environment. They're destroying the fishing population, and which feeds our people. And what it does is the windmills end up costing 200 to 300% more for the electricity that they produce.
Oh yeah, and the same for the solar panels. New Jersey had gotten rid of almost all of its coal-powered plants in favor of these alternate energy sources. And that was a flashpoint in this past gubernatorial race, right? Mikey Sherrill kept running on, I'm going to freeze all increases in, gas prices and electricity prices. And then you had the Republican candidate who said, well, I'm not going to just freeze, prices. I'm going to make sure that we can bring back new energy sources like coal, like gas-powered plants. That way your energy prices naturally are lowered because we don't have to just jump into this clean energy when it's expensive. And I think there's an argument to be made, too. Look, if you want to, in the next 100 years, figure out a way where solar panels aren't costing people more money and they are making a difference, that's fine. I don't think anybody would have a problem. But when those solar panels and windmills and any other alternative energy source they find starts costing families an extra $500 a month, that's a problem. And that does more damage to the future of the world than any, climate change has done.
Absolutely correct. And the problem is, and I was a Democrat at one time. I was a Bill Clinton Democrat, and I thought Bill Clinton had some common sense, and but right now the current Democratic Party is run by the socialists, and they have no common sense.
None at all. And again, all of these, especially the progressives, they like to hang their hat on the climate change thing, because they don't actually have anything to fight for, right? So they have to find something to kind of rally their own base with. And climate change falls into that whole social justice, equity thing you constantly hear about, except there's no measurable way to determine whether that social justice is working, that equality is working, that climate justice is working. I heard Harrison Ford at a commencement address just recently talking about how climate change and social justice go hand in hand, and you can't do one without the other, so let's do both. And it's like, maybe he didn't get the memo, but Democrats don't want to talk about climate change because it is destroying a constituency that they desperately need. I read a paper in the New York Times, too, maybe like a month ago, and it basically said that all of these Democrats, the reason that they've been debating that they should talk about climate change is because they want to focus their shtick on affordability. And you can't talk about affordability
it doesn't go together
in the same breath.
Brianna,
Exactly.
we're out of time, but I want to talk to you again some more in the near future. And please stay in touch with us. And thank you so much for coming on this Sunday morning on the Cats Roundtable. And we'll continue to talk, and we'll catch up soon and have a great Memorial Day weekend.
You too. Thanks so much for having me.